Your support keeps these stories alive. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who could trace an entire family meltdown back to a single piece of furniture, but here we are. And the funny, or maybe tragic, part is, it wasn't even an expensive couch, an heirloom, or some rare antique. No, it all started with a folding chair. For years, I got used to the fact that at family gatherings, seating was always a nightmare. Someone was always left standing or squatting on the edge of a coffee table, and somehow it was always me who ended up getting up just for a second and returning to find my spot stolen. I learned my lesson early. If I wanted a place to sit, I had to bring my own. So I invested in what I thought was a genius solution, a high-quality padded folding chair I'd bought for over 80 bucks. Sturdy, comfortable, portable. It was the kind of chair you could sit in for hours without your back staging a protest. But the chair became infamous. People noticed I guarded it like it was made of gold. I didn't share it because if I let someone just try it for a bit, I'd never get it back. That didn't sit well with certain people in the family, especially my cousin's wife. She was one of those people who treated anything she didn't own as community property, and she had strong opinions on what kind of chair I should be bringing. Once, she told me point blank that if I insisted on bringing my own seating, it should be something classy like a wooden dining chair, not one of those ugly metal folding things. I told her I wasn't about to lug a dining chair around in my car like some kind of lunatic. A folding chair fit in my trunk, problem solved. We argued about it in circles until she finally walked away, glaring at me like I'd just insulted her ancestors. From then on, she gave me these icy death stares at every family event, but at least for a while, she kept her comments to herself. Then came the chair incident that set everything in motion. It was months later and I wasn't even at a family gathering, I was hanging out at a friend's house. My good folding chair was set up in his backyard, and at some point while we were all inside, someone just took it, walked right into his yard and carried it off. No one saw anything. The chair was gone, vanished. And that was the day I learned two important lessons. Expensive folding chairs are apparently a hot commodity. If you love something, lock it up when you go inside for snacks. I wasn't going to make that mistake twice. I replaced it with a cheap $3 folding chair I found at a second-hand store. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't particularly comfortable, but if someone stole it, I wouldn't lose sleep. I kept it in my trunk so I was always ready for the next family function, and I figured that was the end of the chair drama. For a while, things seemed calmer. The family pranks that had been a tradition for years slowed down. I wasn't a target anymore, probably because after the chaos of my previous run-ins with them, they decided I wasn't worth the trouble. But while the big pranks stopped, little ones crept back in. Plastic wrap on the fridge handle, salt in the sugar bowl, stuff that made people laugh without anyone losing their temper. Still, even in this lighter mood, the entitlement never went away. And it wasn't long before my cousin's wife, let's call her Martha, made sure I knew she still hadn't forgiven me for being the chair guy. Her marriage to my cousin was already rocky. I'd seen the cracks for a while, arguments over parenting, money, you name it. They had a 7-year-old son, and while my cousin tried to set boundaries, Martha was the definition of an enabler. If the kid wanted something, he got it. If he acted out, she excused it as just being a kid. It was a parenting style that guaranteed trouble down the line, and trouble came faster than I expected. The breaking point for me came at a birthday party at my parents' house. The cake had just been served, and I'd set my phone down on a table so I could enjoy a slice without juggling electronics. In hindsight, I should have known better. That kid, let's call him Ethan, saw my phone, grabbed it, and disappeared. By the time I noticed, he'd locked himself in the master bedroom closet. Now, this wasn't just some kid messing around for a minute. Ethan was grounded from electronics at the time, his father's rule, so he knew exactly what he was doing was off limits. The closet had a lock and the key had been missing for years. From behind the door, we could hear him tapping away on my phone, downloading games like he'd just won the lottery. I knocked, I told him to come out, so did his father. But every time we tried, Martha's voice cut through from the living room, "Just let him play for a while, it's fine." I told her point blank, "It's not fine, that's my phone, not his toy." She rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic. Eventually, my cousin started forcing the door open. It wasn't exactly built like a bank vault, manufactured home, flimsy interior doors, but it still took some effort. Just as he was breaking through, we heard loud, deliberate banging. My stomach sank. When the door finally swung open, Ethan was sitting there with my phone in his hands, the screen spiderwebbed from corner to corner. He'd been smashing it against a shelf. My cousin pulled him out, the kid screaming like he was the victim. The damage was bad, nearly $300 worth of repairs. Luckily, the case had saved the rest of the phone, but I still needed a temporary replacement while it was in the shop. Martha's reaction? Well, maybe if you just let him play, this wouldn't have happened. That was the moment the rest of the family turned on her. People who'd been neutral before were suddenly telling her to knock it off. She clammed up pretty fast, but the glares she shot me across the room could have stripped paint. My cousin, to his credit, paid for the repairs without hesitation. But the incident had lit a fuse in the rest of the family, and the explosion that came next would make the broken phone seem like nothing. After the phone-smashing fiasco at my parents' place, Martha's reputation in the family took a nosedive. People who'd once tolerated her snide remarks started openly rolling their eyes when she spoke. My cousin, already teetering on the edge of calling it quits, had one foot out the door emotionally. And while I'd moved on from the incident, others in the family clearly hadn't. That's when a group of my cousins decided they were going to get back at Martha. Not in any big, life-ruining way, they just wanted a good laugh, something to knock her down a peg. And because these people know how to hold a grudge, they went straight for the thing she hated most, folding chairs. I had nothing to do with this plan. I need to be crystal clear about that because when it all went sideways, my name still got dragged into it. But even from the outside, I could see they were putting an awful lot of effort into what was supposed to be a harmless prank. The idea was simple: replace every single chair in Martha's house with folding chairs. Dining room chairs, gone. Bar stools at the counter, gone. Living room recliners and the sofa hauled into the garage. Even the cushioned patio set she liked to brag about, replaced with metal folding chairs from the local community center, thrift stores, and basically anywhere my cousins could find them. They didn't stop at just swapping the furniture. They went the extra mile, arranging the folding chairs in perfect little groups like they belonged there. In the living room, they made a semicircle around the coffee table. At the dining table, each place setting had a matching metal chair. They even put one folding chair at her vanity table in the bedroom. When they were done, the place looked like a cross between a church basement and a bad high school reunion. The plan was simple: wait for Martha to come home, record her reaction, post it in the family group chat for laughs. Nobody expected what actually happened. It was late afternoon when she walked in. At first there was silence, just the sound of the front door clicking shut. Then came her voice. "What the hell is this?" She stormed through the house, narrating her outrage as she went. "Where's my furniture? What is this? Who did this?" At that point, everyone thought they were about to get the reaction they wanted. A big dramatic meltdown on camera, a few choice insults, maybe her storming out. But then she went dead quiet. And that's when she made a beeline for the kitchen. One of my cousins, realizing what she was about to do, shouted, "Don't let her get a knife!" But by the time they reached her, she was already yanking open drawers. She couldn't find one. Turns out my cousin had recently rearranged the kitchen and put the knives somewhere else, but she wasn't done. In a split-second decision, she pulled a canister of pepper spray from her purse. Now, I've been in a lot of family arguments. I've seen shouting matches, slammed doors, even a few shoves, but I have never seen someone unload pepper spray into a room full of people over a chair prank. The spray hit everyone within range. The living room became instant chaos: coughing, gagging, eyes streaming, people stumbling into walls. And while everyone else was trying to get air, Martha turned on her husband, raking her long fake nails across his face like she was auditioning for a horror movie. She might have done some real damage if one of my other cousins hadn't physically pulled her off him. She was screaming the whole time, shouting things about respect and ruining her home, as if a few folding chairs were a personal attack on her dignity. It didn't take long for someone to call the police. By the time the officers arrived, the living room looked like a crime scene from a bad sitcom: folding chairs everywhere, half the people red-eyed and wheezing, and my cousin's face covered in scratches deep enough to need medical attention. He looked like he'd been in a cage with a bobcat. The cops didn't need much convincing. They had witnesses, video evidence of her trying to grab a knife, and an entire house full of people willing to give statements. Martha was arrested on the spot. That night, she spent her first stint in jail. My cousin filed for an emergency protective order as soon as the paperwork could be processed. The next day, she was served with the order, which barred her from going near him or the house. And yet, somehow my name came up during the fallout. She told anyone who would listen that this was all because of me, because I was the one who started the chair thing by bringing my own to family events. I won't lie, hearing that made me feel complicated. On one hand, I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. On the other, I couldn't shake the thought that maybe if I'd just sat on whatever was available like everyone else, none of this would have spiraled the way it did. But deep down, I knew that was wishful thinking. People like Martha don't need a folding chair to go nuclear, they just need an excuse. Still, the chair war had now gone from petty annoyance to full-blown legal disaster. And as I'd soon find out, this was only the opening act of Martha's spectacular self-destruction. After the pepper spray incident, the rest of Martha's life seemed to collapse in real time. One day she was the self-proclaimed queen of my cousin's household, guarding her imitation Victorian furniture like it was the crown jewels. And the next, she was living with her sister, fresh off a night in jail, clutching a protective order that read like a greatest hits list of her worst behavior. The footage of the folding chair prank and her reaction was already circulating in the family chat. It wasn't just a video, it was a front row seat to her unmasking. You could see the exact moment irritation gave way to rage, rage gave way to violence, and violence tipped over into something unhinged. Her attempts to grab a knife, the pepper spray, the shrieking threats, they were all there in crystal clear audio and video. The cops had copies, so did my cousin's lawyer. Martha was released on bail, but the damage was done. My cousin wasted no time filing for divorce. The court dates came fast, emergency hearings to decide temporary custody of their son, orders about who could be in the marital home, all the procedural chess moves that happen when a marriage detonates this way. And here's the thing, Martha's own mouth was her worst enemy. She couldn't help herself. Every time she got a chance to speak in court, she turned it into a monologue about how she was the victim, how people conspired to make her look bad, how the folding chair prank was some elaborate setup to ruin her marriage. She even name-dropped me, accusing me of masterminding the whole thing like I was some kind of Bond villain with a budget for thrift store furniture. The judge didn't buy it, at all. In fact, the more she talked, the more she revealed how little she understood about her own behavior. The pepper spray alone was enough to paint her as a danger. Add in the attempted knife grab, the physical assault on her husband, and the fact that there were multiple witnesses willing to testify, and it was a slam dunk for my cousin's side. Custody of their son became the centerpiece of the legal battle. My cousin came prepared. He had documented instances of her erratic behavior going back years, financial irresponsibility, and even texts where she encouraged their son to defy him outright. Then there was the incident with my phone, where she defended her son after he locked himself in a closet and smashed it, and that did not look good in front of a judge. When the custody ruling came down, it was a blow Martha never saw coming. My cousin was awarded primary custody. Martha got supervised visitation only, no overnights, no unannounced drop-ins. The judge cited concerns over her emotional stability and ability to provide a safe environment. It was legal speak for you've proven you can't be trusted with your own kid unsupervised. Her reaction in court was a performance. She went from disbelief to tears to anger in the span of 30 seconds, accusing the judge of bias, accusing my cousin of brainwashing the family, accusing me, again, of orchestrating some multi-year campaign against her. At one point, the bailiff actually stepped forward because it looked like she might charge my cousin right there in the courtroom. After the hearing, she was a different person. Or maybe the same person, just without the filter she used to pretend she was holding it together. She leaned into the role of the scorned woman, telling anyone who'd listen that she'd been robbed of her life. She started showing up to family events on her side looking drastically different, platinum blonde hair, deep spray tans, heavy makeup layered on like armor. I heard through the grapevine she was living with some older guy who funded her shopping habits in exchange for her attention. One of my cousins called him the sugar daddy with a sunburn, and I couldn't unhear it after that. Meanwhile, my cousin was rebuilding. He threw out every piece of imitation Victorian furniture she'd hoarded. He said it all looked better than it felt anyway, and honestly, without it, the house seemed lighter, not just physically but emotionally. He focused on his son, who had been put into counseling almost immediately after the custody decision. That boy, I didn't even recognize him after a few months away from Martha's influence. He listened to his dad. He didn't scream or throw fits when he didn't get his way. He still had to be babysat a lot. My cousin's job kept him busy, but even the babysitters said he was a different kid. Calmer, less defiant, like someone had flipped a switch. And yet, despite all of this progress, I couldn't shake the feeling that my folding chair, my cheap folding chair at this point, was still the original domino that tipped this whole mess over. Logically, I knew it wasn't true. Martha's implosion had been coming for years. The chair prank was just the match that lit the fuse. But still, try telling that to my brain at 3 in the morning. Of course, Martha wasn't done. She still had one more performance left in her, one last attempt to claw back control, to rewrite the story, to paint herself as the hero in a drama that by now had spun completely out of her hands. After losing custody, Martha went quiet for a while. Not gone quiet, more like the eerie stillness before a storm. Everyone knew she wasn't the type to fade into the background and accept her new reality. The woman thrived on control, on being at the center of the room, dictating what everyone did, said, and even sat on. Losing that position, losing her son, wasn't something she could just swallow. It started small. She'd post vague Facebook statuses about fake people and toxic energy and how a real mother never gives up. Then came the photos, overly posed selfies with captions about new beginnings and leveling up that sounded like they came from the world's most passive-aggressive self-help book. I ignored all of it. My cousin ignored most of it too. The protective order was still in place and he wasn't about to give her any ammunition, but then she crossed the line from passive-aggressive to just aggressive. She started showing up places she knew my cousin would be: grocery stores, the park where he took his son, even the church parking lot on Sundays. She never technically violated the protective order. She'd stay just far enough away to claim it was coincidence, but everyone could see what she was doing. It was harassment wrapped in a legal loophole. Then came her big plan, the one she apparently thought would win her back public sympathy. One Saturday morning, my cousin was hosting a small get-together in his backyard. Just family, burgers on the grill, nothing fancy. I was there, sitting in my cheap folding chair, the same one I'd been using ever since the original one got stolen, when Martha showed up at the edge of the property, holding a gift bag and wearing a smile so fake it could have been printed. She called out to her son, who was playing on the grass, and started walking toward him. My cousin stepped in immediately, telling her she needed to leave. That's when she pulled out her phone and started recording. Loudly for everyone to hear, she accused him of keeping her baby from her, of poisoning him against his own mother. She kept her camera trained on him, narrating this warped story where she was the heartbroken, loving parent being wronged by a cruel, controlling ex. But here's the thing: she'd miscalculated. She didn't realize we were also recording multiple angles, actually. So while her footage made it look like she was calm and reasonable, our footage caught everything she was doing between takes. The snarling, the insults under her breath, the way she told her son, "One day you'll see the truth and hate him for what he's done." When my cousin told her she was in violation of the spirit, if not the letter of the protective order, she scoffed and said, "Go ahead, call the cops. I'm just a mother trying to see her child." So he did. By the time the police arrived, she'd switched back to her sweet victim voice, but it didn't matter. Between the protective order, the footage we had, and her pattern of behavior, the officers escorted her off the property. Later that week, her visitation rights were suspended entirely pending review. That was the moment, I think, when Martha realized her audience was gone. The family members who used to defend her had quietly backed away months ago. Her support online came mostly from strangers who didn't know the real story, and even they started disappearing when they saw the videos. She stopped showing up after that. No more drive-bys, no more social media tirades aimed directly at us. She retreated into whatever life she'd built with her sugar daddy, showing up online only to post heavily filtered vacation photos and motivational quotes about moving on. The funny thing is, the kid's doing better than anyone expected. Counseling helped him process the mess. He's not perfect, no kid is, but he's steady, he laughs more, he doesn't act like the world owes him every shiny thing he sees. My cousin says it's like living with a different person entirely. As for me, I still bring my folding chair to family gatherings. Still cheap, still a little wobbly, still mine. And every time I set it up, I think about how something so small, so ordinary, somehow became the first domino in a chain reaction that ended in courtrooms, protective orders, and one woman's spectacular public implosion. Do I feel guilty? Sometimes, in those quiet moments when I overthink everything. But mostly I just feel grateful I was never married to Martha. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: folding chairs don't ruin families, people do, the chairs just give them a place to sit while they do it. Time has a way of sanding the edges off even the sharpest memories, but in my family, some stories never quite fade. And somehow, the chair saga has earned a permanent place in that strange hall of fame where funny, awful, and absurd all live together. It's been over a year since the folding chair prank set off Martha's meltdown, and the ripples are still there, some small, some bigger than I'd like to admit. My cousin's life looks completely different now. The house is quieter, calmer. No one's guarding the living room like a dragon sitting on a hoard of imitation Victorian furniture. His son has grown into a kid who can hold a conversation without throwing a tantrum, which still catches me off guard sometimes. But the shadow of Martha's chaos, it still shows up in small ways. At family gatherings, folding chairs have become an inside joke. Someone always reserves one for me, complete with a little handwritten name tag taped to the back. Sometimes they'll bring extra, set them up in ridiculous places. A single chair in the middle of the driveway, one in the bathroom, a pair of them facing each other in a closet. It's harmless now, more laughter than tension, but it's a reminder that everyone still remembers how it all started. Even my cousin's son gets in on it. The first time I brought my chair over after everything had settled, he walked up, tapped the seat and said, "This is yours, right? I'm not allowed to touch it." He said it with a little grin, like he knew he was making fun of himself too. That was the moment I realized he'd grown more than I'd noticed. Every now and then, though, someone will ask the inevitable question, do you think any of it would have happened if you hadn't brought that chair in the first place? It's tempting to say no, to believe that without that original flashpoint, Martha might never have gone full tilt. But the truth is, chairs don't make people come unglued. They just give unstable people one more thing to fixate on. If it hadn't been the chair, it would have been something else, a parking space, a casserole dish, who knows. And besides, the chair wasn't really the start. The cracks in Martha's life were already there. The prank just gave her an audience when she decided to fall apart. As for Martha herself, she's still out there somewhere. We hear about her from time to time, usually through someone on the far edges of the family who's still in touch. Last I heard, she was still with her older boyfriend, still posting filtered vacation photos, still talking about moving forward while making sure everyone knows how wrong she's been. I've stopped paying attention. My cousin has too. The protective order eventually expired, but she hasn't tried to come back into my cousin's or his son's life. Maybe she's finally learned to leave well enough alone. Or maybe she's just waiting for the next excuse to stir the pot. In the meantime, the rest of us live in relative peace. My cousin's doing well, his son's doing better, and me, I'm still the guy with the folding chair in the trunk, ready for any gathering, picnic, or backyard barbecue. Only now, when I set it up, it's not just a seat, it's a reminder of how fast things can spiral, of how much damage one person's instability can cause, and weirdly enough, of how far we've all come since the day Martha decided a few folding chairs were worth going to war over. The legend of the chair still gets told at family get-togethers, usually after a few drinks when everyone's in that mood where the past feels safer to laugh about. Someone will inevitably say, "Hey, remember when Martha pepper sprayed the whole living room?" And the whole circle will groan and laugh at the same time. And I'll sit there in my creaky $3 thrift store chair, smiling quietly. Because while I didn't ask for any of it and I sure as hell didn't want to be part of the chaos, I survived it. We all did. The chair may have started the story, but it didn't break us.